Hi Anne, this is your video feedback for July. The email you sent to Karina, you say here that the videos are about posture and tempo, and in Diora's case also about leg yielding. You want to know if the tempo's okay. Lukas can trot real slow, Diora finds it more difficult. Yeah, every horse will, in terms of their balance, find it easier or more difficult, so we'll have a look at that. After a lot of practice, I solved the problem of rein slipping through and can now hold my outer hand lower. Yeah, I'm glad. For your back potentially being less potentially hurt, I'm glad about that. Ideally, I'd like the posture of the horses to be the same as with riding, but we're not there yet. The moment my reins get a little longer, they overbend to the inside. Lukas demonstrates this on the left hand. Even if my inner rein is loose, how do I correct this? I tried more outer rein, going more forward, no inner rein at all, but no success. Okay, well, I'll have a look and see if there's anything obvious. But, you know, just from your words only, ordinarily, if the inner rein is loose, but they're still bending to the inside, I'm guessing there's some postural thing between the two of you going on, but we'll have a little look. You said that in Baroque leg yielding is more sidewards. Well, I'm a bit confused if I said this, and I'm sorry if I misled you somewhere, but what I really mean is that Baroque, the leg yielding has bend. So certainly in the UK, I'm assuming it's the same in Holland, you have a very straight leg yield with hardly a hint of just a softness through maybe the neck and the head. So it's not very gymnastic, it's purely a test of whether the horse is away from your inside leg. In Baroque, we would use it more in terms of going from a moving turn on the forehand into the leg yield, and it's more about it being bendy and soft and the inside hind stepping under, so the whole thing looks soft and round, a similar way that the half pass would. But even more so. So everything tends to be more bendy and stretchy in the Baroque. I tried it with Diora in the second video, but she overbends. I'm taking you mean to the inside, which if it's a true overbend, as in through the whole body she's bending, it might be not too far off acceptable. If she's just bending from your hand to the bit, then, or to whatever she's being ridden in, then I would be a little concerned. I also tried with Lukas in the walk test. I've yet to look at that, so I'll have a look at that. Is this more or less what you meant? Okay, so I'm going to flip over to the first video now. Okay, and here we have you starting with Lukas. And I'm assuming that that little trot with your feet is your cue for the transition to trot. You probably, because I hear later when you're closer to me, certainly with Diora, that you have verbal cues. So it's perhaps just a crossover between a little bit of the physical and a little bit of the verbal. But I liked his attitude. I love this moment where we've stopped here. You see how his head comes up. He looks so proud and elegant there, and he's got one ear on you and one ear, you know, just checking out everything else. I really, really like this. I've watched it through obviously before, and I think it's a super place to start. I'd love his hind legs to be a little more active, a little more flexible, but that doesn't come from nowhere. That's why there are such short periods of trot in the walk-trot tests, because the ethos of the Baroque work is to develop balance before you add the movement. So you're not going round at full tilt trot so that the horse finds their balance in the movement. You're going round at a really steady trot that they can cope with the balance and gradually inject more and more speed, not so much speed, sorry, that's the wrong thing to say, more and more energy, so that the hind legs sit gradually more and more and you work towards collection. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be doing this trot in isolation. I would want to be doing something, if I wasn't riding yet, and this was the beginning of my training in hand, I would expect the trot also, say on the lunge or on the long reins, to be a much more flowing, energetic, more working style trot than we see here. I don't describe the trot in the Baroque tests because it is neither a working or a collected trot. It's a trot that's learning to balance at this level. So it has its inherent problems in not being able to describe it in terms that people know from sort of regular dressage. So yeah, I really like this. There's almost a sort of beginning Piaffe sort of style at the front, which I wouldn't want him to come into. I really like that you did that short amount. I think that was fantastic. But I just love, you see the way he's using his neck to balance himself. He's not feeling tied in. When I watch regular dressage and I see Grand Prix horses that have no movement at all in their head and neck, they're not using their neck as a balancing rod, it kind of worries me where the balance is and that it's all on the rider's hands. I can see there's nothing in your hands really that's helping him to balance. It's really super. And he gets his sweetie, which is lovely. Again, his ears are always on you, which I love. That's a lovely forward, fluent, straight into trot. Again, I like the way he's carrying himself. I can see how well his back's working and his tummy muscles are carrying him, which is absolutely fantastic. I know obviously you keep him fit doing other things other than in handwork, but it is lovely to see that he carries himself. So what I'd be looking at ultimately is a little more activity in the hind legs, and you can't really develop this from the front end. It has to come from him using himself better. So things like from this, you're only doing short periods, which is great. Short periods, very short periods of this trot into walk, into halt, into rein back directly into trot, all the things that will gymnasticize those hind legs and really get him to the place you want him to be. Little moments of shoulder in being introduced into the trot as well. But really just keeping him light and bright and making sure that your cues are really light, because if everything is, it isn't in your case, but if everything was heavily involved in the cue, if you have to ask for it in more than one way, then you're not going to develop that lightness. You're always going to keep asking for the things that you need for the base points, whereas you've got those covered well. So yeah, I really like this. I think it's looking super. I'd just like to see a little bit more forward stepping from those hind legs. You see they're almost coming on the spot into a Piaffe-like trot, which may well be part of your training previously or his training previously, I'm not sure. But we're looking for that reach of the hind leg coming through just a little bit more. So lots of transitions. Watch for that moment when those hind legs are stepping forwards more fluently, and then just just rewarding him with maybe your food or your voice at that point. Also a handy exercise, although we don't technically do the Girabolta in trot, the moving turn on the forehand, you can do a couple of steps of it around you. Make sure you're making a reasonable sized circle, at least a metre or so yourself, otherwise it will be too much. And certainly Diora's not ready yet to do much of that. But certainly Lukas could step his right hind, in this instance here, right under him and step the quarters out in the trot, which often gives you that reach forwards with the hind leg that you're looking for. I'm so pleased to see your position with your, in this case, left hand a little lower, because you just look both so much more comfortable with it. So that's really super. So again there, he's good, he goes forwards to the trot, but I would really like to see him start to snap into that trot, so there's not a moment's consideration, did you want me to trot or not, it's straight into the trot, and that will help those hind legs as well, that will give you that extra, but we've got a nice push forwards and under here. He tends to be a tiny bit draggy with those toes. I've stopped it here really in a place where he's actually got a nice lift, He's gone through enough with that right hind. Can you see that? It looks really quite nice. But there's a moment behind that where he tends to be a little bit slower on the bring through with that right hand toe, assuming that there is nothing physically wrong that would prevent that being a possibility. Then I would certainly be looking at doing some pole work either on the lunge. It's difficult in hand, certainly in trot, because I think for the handler to try and negotiate the pole, unless you can put them in a certain place where you can be on the track without a pole and the poles are lined up specifically for him. But certainly encouraging him to lift up and lift through if that's a physical possibility for him. Here's very nice. Love this. Just what I was saying. that would work for him, and it does. Look at that right hind was getting, especially at the beginning of that, getting an absolutely super reach under the body, and then instantly you come to walk and give the rein. This is what I want to see. I mean, this is the perfect tick in the box for correct training. He straight away goes down into that lengthened posture, which is absolutely super, and a lovely sneeze and snort, and gets his reward. So we come again on the left rein. Again, you look so much more comfortable. The one thing I would try and think about is, can you see your posture here? If I just put my pen on that for you. You are tending to incline. Oh dear me, I don't know what I've done there. Excuse me, I had it in the wrong bit. I had it in the text box. Let's do a line instead. You tend to have a little bit of a lean in on your posture. If you can think of being more upright in your balance, so that your balance comes straighter. And I know that's difficult, but you have got these gorgeous long limbs, which I'm sure you can manage to cope a little more. It's just that you may need that leaning as a moment of a cue sometimes, just to say, keep your shoulder there. So it would be really nice if we could consider you being a little bit straighter in that posture for yourself. It's just a minor thing. And on this rein, I notice it more. There's a little bit of a hint of almost a snag with that left hind. As it comes up, there's a moment of hover almost. So it is again coming a little bit passagey, piaffe passagey in that. So I would really like the fluency of those hind limbs to improve, and him to step forwards rather than on the spot with them. I say, depending on his history and his physicality, whether he can manage that, but certainly we'd be looking at it. So yeah, let me find, oh, that's not the right frame. I want to find him on an open frame. Yeah, that's a little bit easier for me to show you. So what we'd be looking at is for this hind leg to come via all its, to do that separate ones. Excuse me, I'm going to erase that one and start again. Let's just do it on a single line, it's just easier. So we're looking for that hind leg to come under a little bit more. Obviously, you've got all the zigzag of the hind leg limbs to take into account with that. Because at the moment, what I'm tending to see with him a little bit is this little dip in the back, sort of here. And I'd like that, with that hind leg coming under, I would like that line to get pushed up a little, so that his back came more like this, and the loins coiled more around. I'm going to have to do that in a couple. So his loins start to coil around and come under and bring that hind leg under, therefore lifting the forehand. And even as tall as you are, you will then struggle, because he'll be so tall in his head. Okay, so it's minor points, but I know you want to know about the minor points. So he's just joining him up over his back. Can you see that little hover in the left hind? He doesn't just quite pop it under as well as he could. He just holds it a little. I love this little expressive trot here, where you really got things going. And again, I very much like that, and I think that's something if you can do that, and if you can run with the trot, so you get little periods of the shorter trot and then the longer trot. I love it. The tempo is super, but he still has that little hover in that left hind. And I say, you can probably look back over videos over the years and notice that he's possibly always had it. Gait is something that is often innate and born within, and we can improve it quite a lot. But I would just like to see that left hind a little less sticky, a little less up, and a little more swinging through. I think we now come to Diora. Yeah, this is lovely. So I know you said Diora finds this more difficult, and I understand that, and I can see those hinds. But what I love is the fluency in her hind legs. So in actual fact, I know you think that Lukas is perhaps more correct and more able in this, but actually what I prefer in Diora is the fluency and the flexion in those hind legs. So I can see in front of you, she's struggling to cope. So I would keep it to very short periods, because the transition is your magic. Don't worry about doing lots of trot in terms of time. It's really, really just the transitions that help. So I'm really liking the way she comes through. Again, she can be a little flat in the walk with her hind legs coming through, but she's a little better in the trot. A really neat trot transition there. So I'm really chuffed with the way that's coming. So whilst, yes, I agree that Lukas can sustain it better and seems to be more comfortable doing it, I actually like the potential that Diora has more in a way. So well done. I'm going to flip over to the other video now. Okay, and here we are with your second video. The beginning bit, I know you're walking along the track, and I'm thinking here you're showing me a little bit how she overbends when you're not particularly asking for it, but I wasn't certain. But I love your new position, and it really does make such a difference to both of you. What I see here is the quarters are coming in a little. So you remember what I said to you earlier in the video, how you have this lean in a little towards her. So what that ends up doing is blocking that shoulder there. If you block that shoulder, the natural thing is for the quarters to pop out, because if you close every other door than one is going to find the exit. So what we would try to do is straighten you up, which leaves this shoulder plenty of room, because the horse's shoulder is massive. If they can't see a way forwards for it, they'll sort of hug it in away a little, and that's when those quarters pop out. So those quarters will shift back that direction and stay much more in line. Obviously you could help this by a moment of shoulder fore, because you would then be creating space for that left shoulder. But you know, just be aware that how much you taking that lean in can affect her posture. But I'm loving, look how much more relaxed you are, but you could just work on that a tiny bit more. And I think that will help with your bending from your hand to from your right hand to your left hand when she overbends. This is just a super walk. Really lovely, very flexible. And there you asked quite a lot with the left hand before you went in. So before you even started the leg yield, you've said, come on, let's have, you didn't perhaps intend to, but you've asked for a lot of inside bend. And then when you get to here, this first video, this first still shows it absolutely perfectly. She's gone for a massive escape out of there, and you have tried to control it a little bit by more bend here. Even if the rein is quite loose, she's still going to instantly follow that because of the fact that she's already popped out of that shoulder. So if we change colour here, if you can just have a little half halt on that right rein, on the outside rein, to slow that shoulder down a little, you're going to get lots more of that sidewards nature from the hind legs, because I know when we continue to run this video, we're going to see that Diora properly escapes out of that right shoulder, and that the haunches don't really keep up. So we have a good couple of steps there. No, actually that's pretty good, but I think there we got to a point, yeah, where she just couldn't keep doing it. So what I'd be wanting to see is those shoulders slowed right down, so these hind legs can step right over as they go. But you know, it's so close, really. The softness and the flexibility in a horse of this size is incredible. It really is. It's really nice. But I know you will say you've got a soft rein in that left hand, but your hand position is still inside. So just push that left hand. Just push that left hand a little closer to her, and just indicate to her by pushing your hand out there where you would like her head to be. It's quite a lot going on at once to cope with, but I think you'll be absolutely brilliant at it, because you normally manage to pick these things up beautifully. So by the time you got there, for instance, you were really very overbent and not in the greatest style for the leg yield. I think what I might have said to you about more sidewards is in particular note to your horses. So not necessarily that in the Baroque we want just sidewards, because we definitely want forwards as well. We don't want a full pass as in the Western full pass. But with your horses, I really want those hind legs to catch up and have that lovely sweep sidewards that she has in her shoulders. So yeah, I think another handy little exercise you can do is to do less steps than you did there and instantly go on to a right circle, in which case you'll be on the outside of the right circle. So if you get my gist, you'll be going from, unfortunately, a little excessive left bend, but as soon as you move on to the right circle, you won't change sides, you won't halt, just ride a circle with yourself on the outside, work a circle with you on the outside of it, and that will really help her. So yeah, just changing to the opposite bend is always really fruitful. Again, very elegant steps. Good. Yeah, and there again, you're just pushing a little heavy on the shoulders. So I think maybe it's my fault for not explaining it properly. Words are always difficult. You're just pushing her a little too fast through that shoulder. And to cope with that, then she's leaning on that shoulder. And I'd just like you to slow that shoulder down a fraction so that she doesn't rush out of it. There, you did it, but then you went back to just see you had that little feel in the right rein. There, you got it, much better. There is so much better. So I would practice those last couple of steps that you had there with those in mind. Keep thinking about those, how you had that ability to just slower with the left hand there, and you didn't keep asking with the right rein, you did give it. So excellent, you know, really just tighten that up a little bit now. Less push through the shoulders to begin with. And start it from a giravolta, start it from the moving turn on the forehand, so that you would do a moving turn on the forehand somewhere in the arena. Encourage her to shift those hind legs right underneath her, and then just wherever you are, finish it with a leg yield for 2 or 3 steps to the nearest part of the track you can. It's a really, really helpful exercise. Good. Come to a really nice light trot transition there. Again, she needs to be a little clearer and quicker off the cue, as I said about Lukas, but I'm really, really liking this. And you can see how wobbly she gets through her head and neck, that's really hard for her to sustain. So less time, I would have less time in that trot and much more, because again there's just a couple of steps there when she came off the track where it was getting a little short, a bit like Lukas, and she's almost, you know, not going anywhere with her hind legs. So keep it shorter that she can manage to balance, and then you're almost there. Again, I think I'd like her head and neck a tiny bit more up, as it is there at the end in that super transition. So there's lots and lots to like, and I think you're really getting there. Keep your periods of trot shorter so that they are gymnastically helpful. Add in some things like rein back and obviously Diora eventually. Well, you could do shoulder in walk. I was going to say eventually you can add the shoulder in, but I would do shoulder in walk and then straight forwards into a few trot transitions, another few steps of shoulder in walk. And just play around with it like that, but really excellent and pleasing to see her progress, and Lukas's. Well done.